What if your morning coffee cost you 0.000067 tokens instead of $3? What if the $20 bill in your pocket became a relic, a fossil of a dying era? What if your paycheck, your rent, your retirement savings all flowed not through your local bank, but through a decentralized network of code maintained by no government and governed by no borders? Welcome to What If Horizons, the podcast where we peel back the curtain on the possible, the probable, and the profoundly world-changing. I'm your host, and today we venture into a financial transformation that could redefine the very fabric of the modern world. We ask, what if cryptocurrency becomes the world's official currency? Let's set the stage. Right now, cryptocurrency sits somewhere between revolutionary promise and speculative chaos. Bitcoin has broken past $100,000. Ethereum, Solana, and stablecoins have become embedded in global finance. ETFs are now mainstream, and corporations, Amazon, Walmart, Samsung, are experimenting with tokenized payments, some even developing their own branded stablecoins. At the same time, central banks are racing to deploy CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, that mimic crypto but with national control. So what if the tipping point comes? What if one day, not too far from now, governments officially declare the age of fiat dead and the age of digital money has begun? We're not talking about just increased adoption here. We're talking about cryptocurrency replacing national currencies as the de facto medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. A unified, interoperable system of digital money used across borders, across societies, and across economic classes. The dollar, the euro, the yen, they don't go away overnight, but they become ghost currencies, their physical notes phased out, their monetary control handed off to code. In this episode, we're going to trace that scenario, what leads to it, how it happens, and what it means for your wallet, your government, and your sense of stability in a world built on trust and paper promises. To understand how cryptocurrency could become the world's official currency, we have to start by examining the cracks already forming in the global financial system. Inflation, debt, and disillusionment, these are not fringe problems anymore. Central banks around the world, from Washington to Ankara, are struggling to manage inflationary cycles with outdated tools. In many developing nations, trust in fiat money has collapsed entirely. In countries like Argentina and Lebanon, entire generations have watched their savings evaporate as currency devaluation spun out of control. In these contexts, Bitcoin isn't a fad, it's an escape hatch. For millions, it's already more reliable than their national currency. And now, major institutions are legitimizing what was once considered the financial Wild West. BlackRock, Fidelity, and even JP Morgan are investing in or building infrastructure for crypto custody and trading. Entire nation-states are getting involved. El Salvador may be the poster child, having adopted Bitcoin as legal tender in 2021, but it's not alone. The Central African Republic followed suit. Meanwhile, countries like China, India, and Brazil are deploying or testing their own CBDCs. These state-backed digital currencies mimic the structure of crypto while keeping control centralized. But the point remains, the world is shifting. Retail giants aren't far behind. Amazon and Walmart have both filed patents and explored launching their own digital currencies, USD-pegged stablecoins that could be used to pay for goods, transfer across borders, or even be offered as rewards. Suddenly, we're imagining a world where your paycheck comes in Amazon dollars, your rent is deducted in Apple coin, and your grocery store offers discounts for paying in Walmart token. And if those coins are pegged to a global stable reserve, maybe a crypto version of the IMF's SDR basket, then they become more than store credits. They become currency. In parallel, central banks are sounding the alarm. The Bank for International Settlements warns that unregulated stablecoins could destabilize economies. The European Central Bank is fast-tracking the digital euro. The US, once hesitant, is now openly debating the design of a digital dollar. But these efforts aren't just reactionary, they're strategic. If private crypto solutions become too dominant, governments lose control. And control over currency isn't just about money. It's about sovereignty, taxation, surveillance, and power. The dominoes are aligning. Institutional legitimacy, state interest, retail experimentation, public frustration. The real question isn't if this change can happen. It's what happens when it does. So let's imagine the threshold has been crossed. One by one, governments begin adopting a new standard, a globally recognized cryptocurrency, or perhaps a carefully selected basket of digital tokens that represent a diversified, programmable, and decentralized monetary base. Whether it's a dominant stablecoin like USDT 2.0, a next-gen Bitcoin layer, or a coordinated network of CBDCs stitched together by smart contracts, the result is clear: the end of cash as we know it, and the dawn of digital-only currency. Daily life changes almost instantly. Your bank account is replaced by a digital wallet, likely stored on your phone or biometric device. There's no need for physical ATMs anymore, and no one asks you to carry change. You're paid in crypto, taxed in crypto, and tip your local barista using tokens that settle in seconds. Cross-border payments, once slow, expensive, and often entangled in bureaucracy, are nearly instant and virtually free. A nurse in Kenya can send money to her cousin in the Philippines in seconds, without involving Western Union, wire fees, or intermediary banks. Friction disappears, but the changes go deeper than speed. In a crypto-native world, identity and currency are tightly linked. Your digital wallet isn't just where you store money. It's your passport to government services, tax systems, healthcare subsidies, maybe even voting. If programmable money becomes mainstream, then restrictions and incentives can be embedded directly into your transactions. Imagine a climate coin that can't be spent on gasoline, or a food stamp token that only works at approved grocers. This level of monetary engineering can be efficient or terrifying, depending on how it's used. And the power dynamics shift. Without physical money, under-the-table economies become harder to sustain. Tax evasion, bribery, even informal labor markets are brought under the microscope. That might increase fairness, or it might squeeze the poor and undocumented even further. Black markets move to privacy coins like Monero, or create entirely new layers of underground digital exchange. Meanwhile, corporations build new loyalty ecosystems, offering discounts, benefits, even interest on tokens they issue themselves, effectively becoming mini-governments within their own consumer bases. Now imagine the role of the state. If a global crypto is administered by an open-source protocol or international consortium, then national governments are no longer monetary kings. They can't print money to stimulate the economy. They can't devalue their currency to boost exports. Fiscal policy must be rethought entirely. Countries that fail to adapt quickly find themselves locked out of trade, with capital flowing toward more crypto-literate, tech-forward economies. In this imagined near future, digital assets aren't exotic. They are as ubiquitous as debit cards once were. Every transaction is traceable. Every economic act leaves a footprint. And while fraud may decline, surveillance becomes total. What we gain in efficiency, we may lose in autonomy. Still, to the majority, the system just works, seamless, fast, global. But there's a catch. And in the next part, we explore how this revolution in currency reshapes entire macroeconomic structures, from central banks to inflation, from debt to deflationary spiral. Because when the world's money supply is no longer in human hands, the consequences ripple far beyond our wallets. Let's pull back now and examine the beating heart of any economic system: monetary policy. For over a century, central banks have controlled the levers that manage inflation, interest rates, unemployment, and national growth. But in a world where cryptocurrency becomes the world's official currency, those levers are either broken or completely removed from the hands of governments. Start with the basics. Most cryptocurrencies are either supply-capped or operate under pre-coded issuance rules. Bitcoin, for example, has a hard limit of 21 million coins. Ethereum has shifted to a deflationary model. If such digital assets, or a blend of them, form the backbone of the global monetary system, then central banks no longer have the power to print money in times of crisis. That's both exhilarating and terrifying. During recessions, governments usually respond with stimulus, lowering interest rates, expanding the money supply, injecting cash into the economy. In a crypto-native system, how do they do that? They can't simply issue more tokens unless they control the network itself. And if they do, it's no longer decentralized. They could try redistributing existing assets, but without control over supply, that's like moving chairs around a sinking ship. the entire economic playbook becomes obsolete. Now consider inflation. In fiat economies, inflation is managed, sometimes poorly, through the manipulation of interest rates and monetary expansion. In crypto, inflation is either fixed, algorithmic, or non-existent. That sounds good in theory, until you remember that most modern economies are built on debt. Governments issue bonds. Companies take out loans. Consumers borrow. Debt thrives in slightly inflationary environments because money today is worth more than money tomorrow. But what if your currency doesn't inflate? What if, instead, it increases in value over time, like Bitcoin often has? That encourages saving, not spending. Suddenly, people hoard their tokens, waiting for them to be worth more next month. Businesses delay investment. Economic velocity slows. You have deflation, an economist's worst nightmare. If left unchecked, deflation can spiral into economic paralysis, where no one wants to borrow, invest, or spend. The gears of commerce grind to a halt. Worse, countries that are heavily indebted, think Japan, the US, many EU nations, would face a fiscal reckoning. Without inflation to eat away at their debt loads, and without monetary tools to refinance, they could default. The entire structure of government bonds, pension funds, and long-term public financing would be shaken. How does a nation fund a trillion-dollar infrastructure bill if it can't control its currency? Some countries might respond by adopting dual-layer systems, a global crypto for trade and savings, and a national token for internal spending. But that introduces complexity, fragmentation, and new avenues for inequality. The rich store wealth in Bitcoin. The poor transact in local tokens that still suffer from inflation. Sound familiar? And then there's the geopolitical dimension. Which protocol gets to be the global standard? If Bitcoin becomes dominant, does that give outsized influence to early adopters, mining pools, or developers? If the world shifts to a US-issued stablecoin, does that entrench American hegemony even deeper? If China's digital yuan becomes interoperable with dozens of other nations, does it rewrite the rules of reserve currency? In short, the global monetary transformation isn't just a change of medium. It's a reprogramming of the rules themselves. Economic growth, inflation targets, full employment, all the sacred pillars of 20th century economics, get rewritten in smart contracts and governed by consensus algorithms. We're not just changing how we pay, we're changing how the world runs. In the next section, we'll see how the banking industry, one of the most entrenched and powerful sectors on Earth, responds to a future where they might no longer be necessary. In a world where cryptocurrency becomes the global default currency, few institutions face more existential disruption than traditional banks. For centuries, they've been the essential intermediaries, the gatekeepers of capital, credit, savings, and trust. But in a crypto-native economy, much of their role becomes optional. Let's start with the most fundamental function of a bank, holding your money. In a crypto world, that function is absorbed by digital wallets, self-custodial, or hosted on decentralized platforms. You don't need to deposit your money anywhere. It simply exists in your wallet, cryptographically secured by private keys, visible on-chain, and instantly usable across borders. The idea of waiting 3 days for a wire transfer, or even needing a checking account, becomes quaint. Next, consider lending and credit. In the current system, banks act as intermediaries between savers and borrowers. They assess creditworthiness, charge interest, manage repayment risk, and generate profits through the spread. But in the DeFi, decentralized finance model, smart contracts can perform those same functions. Protocols like Aave, Compound, and Maker already allow users to lend, borrow, and earn yield without a bank in sight. The code determines the terms. Collateral is locked on-chain. There's no loan officer, no closing delay, no manual approval. Of course, DeFi isn't perfect. Smart contract bugs, flash loan attacks, and liquidity crashes show how fragile this system can be. But it's evolving fast. Institutions are watching closely. Some banks are already hedging their bets, investing in DeFi startups, experimenting with tokenized loans, even launching crypto custody services. But the writing is on the wall. In a fully tokenized world, the need for middlemen diminishes dramatically. Then there's the payments industry. Visa, MasterCard, and Swift rake in billions by facilitating global transactions. But with blockchain-based payments, those toll booths disappear. Stablecoins and Layer 2 networks allow near-zero-cost transfers. Settlements occur in minutes, not days. And because the ledger is public, verification and auditing are instantaneous. Payment processors can adapt, but many may be outpaced by nimbler, decentralized alternatives. What does all this mean for financial power? It shifts dramatically. No longer does a bank decide who gets access to capital or who qualifies for a loan. Financial inclusion surges, at least in theory. A farmer in Nigeria can borrow against tokenized land deeds. A teen in India can earn yield by staking stablecoins. A retiree in Poland can bypass inflation by holding digital assets pegged to scarce commodities. The tools of wealth creation become open source. But there are caveats. With disintermediation comes responsibility. Lose your private keys, and your money is gone forever. Click on the wrong phishing link, and your wallet is drained. There's no customer service line for Ethereum. And when things go wrong, and they will, there's no lender of last resort. In 2008, central banks bailed out failing institutions to prevent total collapse. In a decentralized world, who steps in when a major DeFi protocol crashes? And don't think Wall Street will go quietly. Traditional financial giants are already repackaging their services in crypto wrappers, tokenized ETFs, blockchain bonds, crypto-native insurance products. They're trying to bring regulation and safety into a system built on the promise of freedom. The result is a hybrid ecosystem, decentralized at its core, but increasingly bridged to legacy finance. Still, the arc of disruption bends away from the traditional. In a world where you can get a mortgage from a smart contract, insure your car with a DAO, and earn a yield higher than any savings account from staking tokens, what role does your local bank play? What role does JP Morgan? In the next chapter, we'll zoom out from finance and ask a deeper question. What does this transformation mean for society itself? For power, privacy, and politics? Because currency isn't just economics, it's governance. And when the money changes, everything else follows. If money is power, then the shift to cryptocurrency is not just a financial revolution, it's a political one. In a world where digital assets become the default medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account, the very architecture of governance begins to bend. And perhaps nowhere is this more profound than in the trade-offs between freedom and control, privacy and surveillance. Let's begin with privacy. Traditional fiat systems already compromise a great deal of it. Credit cards, banks, and mobile payment apps track where you spend, when you spend, and in some cases, even why you spend. But there are still gaps. Cash transactions remain anonymous. Small economies thrive in the gray zones of informal trade. Crypto changes this equation, often in both directions. On one hand, blockchain technology is inherently transparent. Every transaction is recorded immutably, visible to anyone with access to the ledger. Governments and companies can trace flows of money across wallets and time. Tax evasion becomes harder. Illicit financing becomes more difficult. But so does personal privacy. Suddenly, your entire financial life, from your rent payments to your medical bills, could become a matter of public record unless privacy-preserving technologies evolve quickly enough. Zero-knowledge proofs, mixer protocols, and stealth addresses offer some hope, but are still nascent, fragmented, and often controversial. Now zoom out. Governments begin to adapt. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, offer programmable money, tokens that can be coded with rules. They can expire if unspent, trigger taxes automatically, or restrict purchases based on legal or political constraints. In China's digital yuan experiments, authorities have already trialed limited-use stimulus payments, money that must be spent within certain dates, in certain places. This is efficiency with strings attached. What happens when that logic scales globally? Some nations may lean into crypto's liberating potential, using open protocols, decentralized ID systems, and self-sovereign data models to empower citizens. Others may do the opposite, building digital fences around money to enforce social compliance, monitor dissent, and punish opposition. Imagine a future where your government wallet won't process a donation to an opposition party or freezes automatically if you attend a banned protest. In this world, financial censorship becomes as easy as flipping a switch. And yet, the same tools that allow oppression can also spark liberation. In authoritarian regimes, citizens already use crypto to bypass capital controls, receive aid, and organize. In Venezuela, Nigeria, and parts of Southeast Asia, decentralized currencies offer lifelines when institutions collapse. Crypto-native communities, governed by DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, start building their own civic infrastructure, from public goods funding to disaster relief. It's not just money, it's governance, version 2.0. This also rewrites the concept of national sovereignty. When value flows across borders at the speed of light, tied not to geography, but to protocol, the traditional nation-state model is strained. A Ukrainian refugee can receive funds from a DAO in minutes without needing a bank. A freelance coder in Bangladesh gets paid in stablecoins by a client in Berlin. Taxation, citizenship, and even jurisdiction become fuzzy concepts. You don't just live in a country, you live on a network. In the best-case scenario, this leads to more responsive, modular forms of governance, where people opt into communities that reflect their values, not just their passports. In the worst-case scenario, it creates a fractured world of digital oligarchies, where protocols replace governments but remain unaccountable, invisible, and driven by market logic rather than democratic will. The stakes are immense, the tools are powerful, and the clock is ticking. Up next, what happens when this new system faces its first real stress test? We'll explore the risks of collapse, whether through technical failures, regulatory blowback, or the sheer complexity of governing money and code. Because before a new world can rise, it must first survive its trial by fire. No revolution escapes its reckoning. And if cryptocurrency were to become the world's official currency, its most perilous tests wouldn't come in times of stability, but in moments of chaos. Because when the foundation of global finance shifts to code, distributed networks, and borderless tokens, we also inherit a new class of risks, some unprecedented, others disturbingly familiar in their capacity for disaster. Let's begin with systemic collapse. Imagine a global economy running on a dominant stablecoin, say, one backed by a combination of crypto reserves, real-world assets, and algorithmic balancing mechanisms. Now imagine that one of those mechanisms fails, just as we saw with the infamous collapse of Terra USD. In that event, a seemingly safe digital dollar lost its peg in mere hours, wiping out billions in user funds, shattering investor confidence, and exposing how fragile algorithmic assurances can be. Multiply that event to a global scale, and the implications become nightmarish. If the world relies on digital currencies, and even central banks are issuing tokenized equivalents, a failure in one large protocol could spark cascading panic. Smart contract exploits, Oracle failures, or governance attacks could turn a few lines of code into economic contagion. There are no circuit breakers in DeFi. There is no pause button. You can't shut down the NYSE and go home. The code runs until it breaks, or someone exploits it. Then there's regulation, or the lack thereof. Right now, the world's governments are playing catch-up. The European Union has introduced MiCA to regulate crypto assets. The US is debating frameworks like FIT21 and the Restrict Act. But these are regional responses to a global technology. What happens when one country bans a protocol while another embraces it? When assets are frozen in one jurisdiction and traded freely in another, regulatory arbitrage becomes the norm. It creates fragmentation, confusion, and legal gray zones that erode trust and interoperability. Worse still, bad actors flourish in regulatory vacuums. Scams, rug pulls, and Ponzi schemes have already plagued the crypto space, costing individuals billions. Now imagine these same vulnerabilities at scale, impacting pension funds, sovereign treasuries, or state-backed financial systems. Trust, once broken at that level, doesn't return easily. Let's not forget cyber threats. Crypto is digital infrastructure, always online, globally accessible, and relentlessly targeted. State-sponsored hackers could exploit vulnerabilities in cross-chain bridges or custody wallets. Malicious actors could inject code into smart contracts, steal billions, and destabilize entire economies. Quantum computing, still years away, could theoretically break public key cryptography, the bedrock of wallet security. And unlike traditional banking hacks, these heists are irreversible. Once the tokens move, they're gone. No chargebacks, no recourse, just a public ledger recording your loss forever. And finally, there's human error. Most people are not ready to manage the responsibility of self-custody. A lost seed phrase, a phishing email, a poorly signed transaction. Any of these could vaporize your entire net worth in seconds. We've offloaded decades of financial safety nets, bank guarantees, fraud protection, FDIC insurance, onto the individual. The burden is heavier than most realize. Now, picture this scenario. A global financial panic begins with a bug in a dominant smart contract. Funds are locked. Protocols freeze. People can't access money. Governments scramble to intervene, but lack the tools to do so. In a matter of hours, confidence erodes, not just in one platform, but in the very idea of programmable money. Trust disappears. Markets crash. Panic ensues. Will the new system withstand the storm? Or will it fracture under pressure, exposing how fragile even the most elegant code can be when tested by fear, greed, and human fallibility? Upcoming, we step back from the ledge and ask the question at the heart of it all. If crypto becomes the money we earn, save, and live by, can we reimagine our future around it? Or are we building a digital utopia on foundations of sand? Because the question is no longer if this transition could happen, but what kind of world it would leave in its wake. What if crypto becomes the money we earn, save, and live by? That's the real question, isn't it? Beyond the market tickers, the Twitter feuds, the speculative manias, and regulatory hearings, what does it actually mean to live in a world where digital currency is no longer a niche innovation, but the very fabric of the global economy? It's not about Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever token trends tomorrow. It's about the transformation of our financial identity, our relationship with money, and ultimately, with each other. In this imagined future, you no longer need a bank account to participate in the global economy. You don't need to be born in a wealthy country to access stable currency. You don't need a credit score to get a loan. All you need is a smartphone, an internet connection, and a wallet address. That idea alone is revolutionary. For billions who've been excluded from the financial system due to geography, politics, or sheer poverty, crypto offers an open door. Consider the gig worker in Lagos, paid in USDC from a client in Berlin. The Afghan woman accessing aid directly via crypto after traditional banking collapsed. The 13-year-old in Manila who earns NFT royalties, learns about finance from Discord channels, and reinvests earnings in tokenized startups. These are not hypotheticals. They are now. Multiply them by millions, and you glimpse the scale of disruption. But inclusion doesn't mean utopia. Crypto doesn't solve inequality. It just moves the battlefield. The early adopters, the tech-savvy, the already wealthy, they still hold the keys to power. They mint the coins, control the protocols, and influence governance votes. If we're not careful, we risk replacing legacy banks with digital plutocracies, unaccountable, invisible, and baked into the protocol itself. Still, the potential is staggering. Imagine a world where government services are distributed via smart contracts. Taxes flow automatically, social benefits are transparent, fraud is reduced. Charities operate with on-chain accountability, donors watching their funds reach end users in real time. Political donations become auditable. Aid reaches refugees without middlemen. Money moves at the speed of need. Commerce transforms. Micropayments become viable, enabling new creator economies, pay-per-second streaming, real-time royalties. Content no longer depends on ads or subscriptions. Transactions flow peer-to-peer, frictionless, global. In this future, the internet has its own native money, borderless, permissionless, programmable. But there's always a catch. This world demands new skills. You must manage your own keys, audit your own contracts, read between the lines of tokenomics. There's no centralized help desk. Financial literacy is no longer optional, it's survival. And as power decentralizes, so does risk. If you make a mistake, there's no undo button. The same technology that empowers you also exposes you. So we stand at a crossroads. The world of programmable money is not just coming, it's already seeping into everything. Stablecoins settling billions daily. CBDCs and pilot programs. DAOs managing treasuries worth hundreds of millions. This isn't a thought experiment anymore. It's an economic revolution unfolding in real time. But as with all revolutions, the outcome depends on what we build. and what we refuse to build? Will we embed transparency and fairness into code, or replicate the same hierarchies in shinier wrappers? Will we use these tools to liberate or to control? Because crypto doesn't guarantee freedom. It simply gives us the choice. And that choice, between open systems and closed empires, between economic sovereignty and digital feudalism, will shape our future far more than any token price ever could. In the next part, we'll bring all these threads together, from finance to politics, from risk to opportunity, and leave you with a question that may define the next century. The world we know was built on trust. Trust in governments to issue money, in banks to store it, and in laws to enforce its movement. That trust, however imperfect, was the glue that held global finance together for over a century. But what happens when that glue dissolves? What happens when the foundation shifts from paper and policy to protocol and code? If cryptocurrency becomes the world's official currency, that shift is no longer speculative. It becomes reality. And in that reality, the very notion of trust is redefined. We no longer rely on institutions, we rely on math. We don't ask whether we believe in a central bank's decision. We ask whether the smart contract executed as written. Truth, in this system, is not declared by authority. It's verified on-chain. This transformation is profound. In the same way the internet flattened access to information, crypto flattens access to value. But it also collapses the roles of traditional gatekeepers. Banks, regulators, governments. They don't disappear, but they are no longer the final word. In a crypto-native world, the protocol is law. And that terrifies many, for good reason. Because law written in code is rigid. It doesn't bend for emergencies. It doesn't account for nuance. It can be gamed, hacked, exploited. And yet, it also forces a kind of discipline that fiat systems have lacked for decades. No quantitative easing, no money printing, no backroom bailouts. If the global economy runs on a hard-capped currency like Bitcoin, we face a future where inflation, as we know it, disappears. But so might fiscal flexibility. Governments used to borrowing against tomorrow to fund today would find themselves constrained. Public programs could shrink. Safety nets might fray. Debt-fueled growth would no longer be viable. Some argue this is discipline long overdue. Others see it as a dangerous austerity trap dressed in digital idealism. So where does that leave us? In a world of trade-offs. On one side, efficiency, transparency, and global inclusion. On the other, volatility, fragmentation, and loss of institutional control. The biggest question isn't whether crypto can become the world's currency. Technologically, it already has the foundations. The question is, will we, as a society, accept the consequences that come with it? Can the average citizen handle personal financial sovereignty, knowing that one wrong move, one forgotten key, could erase everything? Can regulators design guardrails that protect consumers without stifling innovation? Can developers create infrastructure that's not only decentralized, but human-centered? And can we, as a species, agree on rules written in code, when we still struggle to agree on rules written in constitutions? Because if this transition happens, it won't be smooth. It will be chaotic, political, generational. There will be resistance, failure, and rebuilding. Entire economies may crumble while new ones rise in their place. And yet, every great shift in human history has followed that path, from feudalism to capitalism, from barter to banking. Cryptocurrency, as a global money system, represents more than financial evolution. It's a civilizational fork in the road, one that could liberate billions, or trap us in a digital future where power hides behind private keys and code bases. In our final part, we'll reflect on the heart of it all. What kind of world are we building, and who gets to decide how money works? So here we are, at the end of our journey, and perhaps standing at the edge of something far bigger. A quiet but seismic revolution is unfolding beneath our feet. Money, the most foundational tool of civilization, is being reimagined in code. It's no longer minted by kings or managed by central banks alone. It's increasingly minted by math, managed by consensus, and governed by communities we've never met, yet transact with daily. What if cryptocurrency truly becomes the world's official currency? The answer is both thrilling and unsettling. It could mean a more inclusive, efficient, and transparent system, where access to money is no longer defined by your passport, zip code, or bank account. It could empower individuals in authoritarian regimes, offer stable value in hyperinflated economies, and reduce the stranglehold of middlemen across industries. But it could also fracture the world into techno-tribes, into networks that don't speak the same monetary language. It could expose us to unprecedented levels of financial surveillance, or, paradoxically, to absolute anonymity that allows criminality to flourish. It could give birth to a new world order, or descend into digital chaos if we lose control of the systems we've built. And so, the deeper truth is this: crypto won't magically solve inequality. It won't automatically create justice. It's just a tool, a powerful, flexible, and disruptive one. But tools reflect the values of the hands that wield them. Will we build a decentralized economy where power is distributed and the system is accountable? Or will we replicate the same hierarchies, only now faster and more opaque? That's up to us. Because this future isn't something we're waiting for. It's something we're writing right now. With every transaction, every line of code, every debate in parliament, and every protocol vote. Whether you hold crypto or not, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, you are part of this moment. You are part of the decision. So as we log off this episode of What If Horizons, here's your call to action. Learn, question, engage. Don't leave the future of money to technocrats and coders alone. Don't wait until it's too late to shape the system you'll live in. Whether we end up with a truly open economy or just a shinier version of the same financial cage depends on what we demand, what we design, and what we refuse to accept. Because if cryptocurrency becomes the world's currency, it won't be a distant dream or a headline. It will be your paycheck, your savings, your power, and you deserve a say. Thanks for listening to What If Horizons. On our next episode, what if artificial intelligence replaces judges in the courtroom? Subscribe now so you don't miss it. Leave us a review, share this episode, and tell us, would you trust crypto to run the global economy? Or is money too important to leave to code? Until next time, keep questioning the future, because the future is already questioning you.